the best of April. Well, we'll caveat that because we're also talking about the games that were a little bit of a letdown in April. I'll talk you through all of my personal bests, highs and lows that went along with them, because I am not just a hype train. I am also, contrary to the comment section occasionally, a troll. I think we need to talk about both sides of things. If you want to go talk about all the positives, you know what? I'm probably not your person from that side of things. Because if we can't be critical of the things we love, and I can't tell you not to back things or not to buy things occasionally, well, you know what? That's a you problem, not a me problem. Go deal with it. And if you want, let's go and talk about board games, because I do love talking about board games. Now, I'm trying to make this quick because we have lots of games to cover from this past month, both by crowdfunding as well as 12 new games ranked in order of how I feel about them now post-April. 12 new games. This was actually the most played log account for me, personally speaking, of any month easily this year, almost in the last 2 years. So let's just talk about these crowdfunding games in no particular order. Let's start with ones that are finishing right now that launched in April. Well, we have This War of Mine, we have Flamecraft, we have Super Pixel Tactics, we have Earth Animal Kingdoms, we have all of those to talk about. So let's just pick one and go. Let's go Flamecraft, which is ending. Apparently pronouncing dual was a make it or break it, as I'm told in the comment section, because that makes me super annoying and again, a troll situation. But I kind of go back and forth on this one. I want to own Dual. I want to own it. And I just don't know if I really want the deluxeified version of this abstract with a thematic incorporation from Flamecraft and Cardboard Alchemy. I think this is right up my alley. I think I love what they're presenting in a Splendor Duels type manner. But I just don't know if I really want all the deluxeifications, the slight increase in the price point, and the get it now factor. I just am not sure. And what do you do when you're not sure? You pass on it. I personally like the gameplay mechanism of the complete your quest, draw them from a bag, manipulate Hyde style thing that they got going on. I'm not as big a fan of the way the campaign was done of throwing it with the Flamecraft expansion content, so take that for what it is. Again, I'm minority here, but I would prefer my things separated, but I know why you do it, because it's easier logistically, it's easier money-wise, and it's easier as a business, so it is what it is. Earth Animal Kingdom. Earth Animal Kingdom, right? Freaking amazing amount of money, again, for a card tableau builder. People love them some Earth. People love them some Earth in general with the thematic incorporation of any of these games. It doesn't matter what it is. It's this or even Fairy Tale, for example, on the extreme other side of things on GameFound, right? This theme of this family or this theme of this earthly whatever you want to say is raising Godzooks some money. And that's why it's been probably the biggest thematic winner over the last 2 years. And I, again, said on my video previously that I prefer Animal Kingdom over Abundance. Just minority. I have no idea where other people are talking or thinking about, and Abundance is now in people's hands, so you can have an abundance of opinions going forward. But again, I give kudos where kudos is due. I like the animal incorporation, but if you didn't like Earth, this isn't going to change your opinion. Neither of these expansions are going to change your mind whatsoever. They're going to add to the analysis paralysis. They're going to add to the mathy tableau building in the first place. And so if you like it, it's a little bit more of a good thing without overstaying its welcome. I'd still make the argument you could probably play with one of them and not both of them, but I do give kudos because they don't make you have the other expansion to play with this expansion, which I actually really enjoy. Okay, on the flip side of things, we're going compliment sandwich, right? We're going positive, negative, and then positive. Okay, letdown. Helldivers 2. I have to put it out there. I had this as one of my most anticipated of the month of April before it launched, and I just looked at this and I said, I don't necessarily have an IP attachment, and I didn't see any reason for me to be like super into it from that aspect of things either. I didn't see anything super different from the gameplay dynamics. I like the fact that they went with the super big miniatures in some cases because it gives more detail and it actually makes them more meaningful, potentially, maybe. But at the same time, being a hypocrite, but I'm not really as big enthralled of the incorporation mechanically speaking. I guess it works because of how you're going to be battling them and maneuvering under them and them taking up space and some of those vague things. But ultimately, I think with the Steamforged product right now, is this going to be an Elden Ring? Is this going to be a Mass Effect? Is this going to be an Elden Ring situation? Is this going to be a Dark Souls situation? Is this going to be something in between? And if I can't tell, I don't really want to spend $300 or $400 right now. It's a wait and see approach. And I'm okay with that. And Steamforged does the exclusives, and the price is definitely less than what it was going to show up at their web shop. So that's the incentive to get it. And if you're a big fan of the video game, I feel like a lot of people did it from that side of things too. But I have to question whether or not this actually achieved what their funding goal was internally, because of how big this IP on the video game side has been recently. It's absolutely, utterly killing it in all those regards. But does it compare to something like The Witcher? Or is it more like a Gods of War situation from CMON, where, again, as a huge IP, not as big as The Witcher, clearly, not as big as Marvel, clearly, but does this meet expectations? You guys tell me. I have no clue on that one, but I have to say, I guess maybe you were expecting a little bit more. Similarly, we're going to see very, very soon what Tekken does as well, because that's going to be from Go On Board. So is that a bigger IP? Does it always translate? Does bigger mean more funding on crowdfunding? I have no idea anymore on the video game side of things. It's a crapshoot dice roll more than anything else. Similarly with Reichbusters Reloaded, I had the thought that this had real high potential, but the campaign was rather a little bit of a letdown lackluster-wise in terms of, why do I need this one? Why should I get this one? What am I getting with this one? And as a second edition that raised approximately half of the first one that it did on Kickstarter, I have to again go, why? Because in theory, this should be a 1.3, a 1.5, a 2.0 version. You should revamp things. You should make things more accessible. You should make it really, this is why you're getting this new version. Now, I know there's always that, thought that, well, if I do this, then the previous one's not going to get as much traction. I just want a better product. I want a better product for more consumers. And so if you have to mea culpa on the first one, we've seen that 100 times on crowdfunding in the last couple of years. And I don't begrudge that. I don't necessarily like it, which is why sometimes you wait for the second or third iteration. See Cthulhu Death May Die or, Marvel United in that sense. But how do you feel about them, Apples, now? Do you feel like this was unique enough or different enough from them to give you a real reason to get it? And overarchingly, based on the funding, I would dare say maybe not. But again, putting words in other people's mouths. But how do you interpret then the funding when it's that much of a difference? Or is it just oversaturation on the dungeon crawl scenario side of things? I do fear that, because unless you're one of the big names nowadays, who gets what amount of funding? And again, $500,000 is still freaking great overall, but comparatively to what Monolith is hoping for, is it great? That's what you have to start to wonder, right? Like any other company with the track record of CMONs would be ecstatic, but is $1 million good for CMON nowadays, especially with all of, that's how I look at things. Not is it good for what they needed it to be? And those are the big question marks financially, but that's also why sometimes you go, okay, well, I'm going to pump the brakes on the crowdfunding and see what happens with this too. The next one up, I would think it's really interesting, and I don't really know what to make of this, but I overarchingly have to call it sort of a positive win from Plaid Hat Games, because they've got sort of this dual, we're going a bunch at retail and we're doing a bunch on crowdfunding. And with Ashes Ascendancy, I had no clue what to make of this as sort of a revamped, recore, retooling, reintro style of the Ashes, more in a cooperative head-to-head style of things, depending on what your preferred play mode is. And again, as a deck builder, as a deck construction game, I've realized that this game is never going to be me, unless one of my kids really likes doing deck construction growing up later. But I have to say, again, for $500,000 for this, I think that is really, really good. And so I like seeing that. I just want to see what the next Summoner Wars expansions are at retail. I'm still looking for a good place to get Isle Vekid and Spectral Conclave. I haven't pulled the trigger yet, but those are huge on my wish list. But I'd say that this bodes well for more Ashes in the future if you're a fan of this. But again, I'd say, is this one that you needed as an additional starter set? Maybe something like Horizons of Spirit Island, if you will, where it's a great intro set if you haven't gotten in. But if you have all the other stuff, is it going to be as good? That's just the question mark with the new stuff in this campaign, with a lot of deluxeified add-ons that you could get as well. But I mean, gameplay, no different. Gameplay, solid. Gameplay, no question mark, so you know what you're getting there. Similarly, Dragons of Etchinstone, I have to give kudos where this one is due. Now, people can argue, but I will put my opinion out there, and you can, again, feel free to disagree with me. I'm routinely wrong and an idiot and a hypocrite, like I said. I felt like this was a good value because of what we see, because Chip Theory has been relatively consistent with their pricing on crowdfunding, similar to Steve Forged in that way, of being less on the crowdfunding, even including the shipping cost, than what it is at retail. You can make the argument that you don't like this game. You can make the argument that this is, purely a print and play game that you can get for cheaper that way. But for the physical copy version of now versus later, they have been very consistent in this. And I think that I like seeing them going for other things outside of their core bread and butter. I like this. I love like the Aroxley approach, where everything is under the sun and they're giving their touch to all different types of mechanics. I am not one of those people that's like, I only like this company's games, right? I don't have any allegiance to companies, just like I don't have any allegiance to like bands, right? I like your one song. I maybe like 2 of your songs. I probably don't like your whole album. I am not one of those people. I have bought very few albums. I discovered that when I was young, majority of the album songs on whatever band I was buying, CD-wise, right, was not my favorite. There are like 2 or 3 albums that I like from top to bottom, and they're named Beastie Boys and or Linkin Park. Take that for what you will. That is my taste, if that tells you anything about my mindset and what age I grew up in. Anyway, but I like what Dragons of Etchinstone launched and did, and the manipulation and the clever use of the multiplay cards. I think a lot of people are going to be very, very pleased with this who hadn't heard it before. Or, you know what, on the flip side of things, right? Because I'll argue with the print and play players that are saying, you know, you should just get it for cheaper that way. I can't print and play. I can't do it feasibly, logistically, physically capable of doing it. And so I will buy a slight premium for a pre-printed version for me in that way. And we all have things like that in our life, right? You pay them to clean something outside or pick up something outside or exterminate outside or snowplow the driveway or, you know, mow the lawn or whatever it may be, right? You all have that little thing that you're like, I could do this, but it's a lot more labor intensive and something that I don't enjoy doing. And so I'd rather pay a slight premium to have somebody else do it so I don't have to. And that's how I look at print and plays, at least on our hobby scene of things. So that's, again, just my take. Super Pixel Tactics. This is an incredibly niche game, but I think level 99 overachieved with this one again too. To get over $200,000 is freaking incredible for a card-driven gameplay as well. The only thing I'll say, as I talked about in my multi-game review earlier this month, was that I don't think you need all of what they're offering, right? Like, I think that it is so asymmetric and deep and meta analysis paralysis style things that one deck, let alone maybe even 2, is going to be more than you can ever possibly get through. And I say that as hypocrite in chief who owns a lot of stuff that is just way too much in general, whether it's Dungeon Crawlers, the Marvel Uniteds, the Mythic Battles Pantheons, or even the Bullets, or the other level 99 game Millennium Blades. I would make the argument, though, to get your favorite. And I love the aesthetic of this, truth be told, because, again, it's probably one of the closest things we have to Final Fantasy Tactics that isn't named Adventure Tactics. And so I like it in that realm of things with an asymmetric, symmetric situation where, again, I'm going to take flack if I don't explain myself there. It's an symmetric deck where you can choose to use these cards asymmetrically because they have about 4 different ways that you can use them. And so it is my vibe. It is not everyone else's vibe, and so I don't routinely recommend it unless your taste is incredibly similar. And I give them kudos as well for falling on the sword a little bit and putting out an update saying, you know what, we're just unlocking all these stretch goals. We're giving them to you, and we're giving them to you in spades. They're not going to hit the goals, and you know what, they want to include it. And plus or minus whether it was pre-stretched or not, I can't speak to that. I think that's a ton of content, and so they're really doing well from that standpoint, regardless of what you think. It's just, I don't think this game is probably for you, right? Because I'm trying to give you recommendations, not what I think I'm going to do, but for you to get $150 of Pixel Tactics is a hell of a lot. So just take that for what you will, I guess, at the same time, and ignore me because my advice is all wrong. And last up here, we'll talk about this war of mine. This war of mine, I don't really have anything bad to say about it. I think that GameFound and Awakened Realms have got another smashing hit on their hand. It's just a question of whether or not this is for you, because again, I look at this game as sort of like Robinson Crusoe, where it's fine, right? But I don't think the miniatures do anything for me in this game. You can make an argument that in a lot of games they have a lot of table presence, a lot of thematic incorporation, a lot of it adds value to it. And for me, with a game like Robinson Crusoe or this War of Mine and several others like Euros style, they just don't have the appeal. And so I have no problem or qualms with people that do find that enjoyable, and Awakened Realms put some of the best ones out in the market, so I can't, disparage what you're going to be getting product wise in that way. But I go, okay, I think it's fine, absolutely fine, utterly fine without them as a whole. And it's cool if you want to deluxify it, but again, it's a second edition situation, and this War of Mine just isn't my type of game. It's one of those games I've never had any interest in acquiring, and this was an easy campaign pass for me as well too, because there's enough negativity in life that I don't need the super depressing stories to go along with them in the board game side of things, as a minor side tangent. But the shared decision making style of a game like this too is just not my preference as a whole, even from a cooperative game standpoint, as a cooperative game lover. And so I'd be happy to play it if someone brought it over. I'd be happy to get it in a trade if I could, get rid of something that I don't want, but I have never really looked for it either. And so either way, a ton of money and a ton of interest. So yeah, congrats. So best new games for me of the month. And I'm going to start off with actually an honorable mention of not a new game of the month. I know, right? Like, he's literally contradicting himself the second sentence into this portion of the video. But where I'm going with this is I finally got Root played more. Not the physical version, but the app. So because I'm trying to teach myself all the different factions, so eventually it's going to be easier to get to play in person, or I'm just going to teach my 11-year-old and we can play and just get destroyed and, not play it as a great 2-player game, but just play it because he's really wanting to get into more stuff. So I have to put that out there. So I'll be playing more digital in the near future, and I'm sure you'll hear me talk about it and how horrible I am at it, because I'm absolutely, utterly, atrociously off of this game. This is going to be one of those games that I would probably never win the physical version of, period, and I'm making my peace with that already. So, number 12, AracKhan Wars. They reached out to me, they said, hey, would you like to talk about AracKhan Wars? Would you like to even just play AracKhan Wars? We're not going to put any pressure on you. And so AracKhan Wars, as this deck constructing style of game, but you don't need to deck construct, but you can in terms of the number of points you're putting in the cards into the deck as a whole, and then laying them out on the grid on a turn-by-turn basis. I have mixed feelings on this one right now. It's very static in terms of how you're doing things initially, but a lot of the manipulation is there, but everything is just like very low powered. And so I guess what I'm used to and what I was expecting with this is like sort of like a mind bug situation or Summoner Wars, where everything is crazy and overpowered. So nothing is crazy and overpowered. And this is more of a, we're going to take this a little bit calm, even though the aesthetic may make you think otherwise. And so I'm just not sure, because again, I don't do a lot of the deck construction like I mentioned. So that element of things is not as strong for me. And I sort of am just not sure how I feel about it after a couple plays right now, even with the different factions, because they do have a different play style. And so it's also a little bit of mismatch in play style, because, you always find these games where you're like, you find the faction that you like, manipulating, you find the faction that clicks with your screwy brain up here. And that's kind of what I'm looking at this one. And I just don't know yet. So that's why I had to start off with this one. Then Shallow Regrets. I talked about this in my crowdfunding, review. I talked about this on my little multi-game review. I don't know, like, it just didn't click home with me. I thought it was fine, but I also made the argument this is one of the few button shy games I've ever felt like I needed the expansion with, that I didn't really want to play it as is. Then I thought it needed a few more cards of the pile shuffling, grabbing 2 of them and picking one of them based on the prerequisites that you already have and the manipulation of the powers that you can use once per game. I just did not get hooked by it. Yow! Little CSI Miami reference there, but I can see why people like it, and it's button shy, and it's easy to play, it's super rules overhead low, and you can play it with about anyone. And if you get that expansion, maybe that addresses all of my concerns as a whole. So then number 10, we're talking Rebel Princess. Rebel Princess, I bought the deluxe edition. It's hearts with superpowers, folks. It's hearts with superpowers. Don't even convolute it any more than that. It's very nice. It's very nice. My family is not used to trick takers. My wife and I all the time, right? Hearts, spades. We grew up. I'm in Michigan, right? Euchre is, second language here. I'm not a Euper though, but Euchre and that style of things. Hearts I even played with my parents growing up. So it's just in my blood. And so I had to pick it up. I had to do it. My kids don't quite grasp the concept of the nuances of sometimes you want to win those tricks and sometimes you want to burn cards in order to not win those tricks. And the passing from the left to the right and the powers and the asymmetry and the changing of the round by round, what's going on event-wise, situation. You know what? We're going to see. And, I'm finding that we are a card game family. There's one higher on this list that I'll mention that we really hit home on, that we've really loved even more so. And then I also just picked up the new release, All on Board. I'm not even sure if it's Devere or it's somebody else, actually, I think. Just a light little card game of putting animals in boats and hoping that they love or don't love and match and things like that. But I think that's going to be a real hit too. We'll talk about that one probably in the May video. And then we'll talk about number 9 from Studio Midhall with Hollow Pact, which is nearing the end of the crowdfunding at the time of me filming this, which again, I feel like I have mixed opinions on. Like, I love one versus all. I love the multi-use cards that they're doing with this. I like their aesthetic, their beast aesthetic style of things. But right now, if you ask me, you know, beast or hollow pact, from what I know and what I have in front of me, I would probably go with beast still at this point. Not that I don't like the other, but I worry about a little bit of game dragging with hollow pact. I'm not really sure how I feel about the semi-cooperative nature of things, of the sort of ball under cup situation where you move them around and kind of pick it out. And then I worry about the minutia of just the turns going from one area to another, and the dynamic difference and balance that you have to have between the two. So for me, I would lean more towards beast with a little bit more asymmetry there, but the multi-use cards are really clever, and I like the little tiles that you can spend your spirits on in order to manipulate a little bit further, but I can't put it up any higher on this list because of that. And that brings me to number 8, also one that I wanted to like more, Hubworld Aidalon, right? Like, I wanted to like this more. I have the decks. They're sitting right over here next to me, next to the camera on the shelf over here. And I just looked at this and I said, mechanically speaking, I can see what they're doing. But based on the decks, I can't also see what they want to do with this overall. And I did not feel like I want to spend this much money to deck construct with a situation that still is going to feel very limited and very constrained just with one set out there. I will not make any more assumptions, just that the price point as well with the deluxifications, I didn't really like how they were broken down. And I just worry that at some point, right, you're going to end up with a bunch of cards just like different TCGs in the past. If you're going to be keeping up with all of these sets, so that you're eventually not going to use a bunch of cards that you bought ever again, potentially. And so how do you feel about that? Because that's kind of what the TCG model is, right? Buy a bunch of cards and use a fraction of them. And hopefully that doesn't happen in this situation. But if you get 2 or 3 or 4 cycles in with this, are you going to be deck constructing 37 different decks and using all of them? Or are you going to have a couple decks that are meta and you're going to be doing it that way? I don't know. But that's the feeling that I kind of get going forward, potentially. Hopefully that's not the case. Again, I hope that that is not the case, because the game's mechanics, by in large and of itself, I almost wish it was more just like a Radlands, because I love the mechanics that they're doing. This I bluff, I dive, I delve, I try and figure out what you've got face down, face up. Do I actually flip it over? Do I spend the resources to kill it? Do I try and get your agents captured in that way? It's freaking awesome. Freaking awesome. I love those mechanics that they presented, but I don't really like the model, and I can't really deck construct. So for me, it was sort of an easier pass than I was hoping for, to be honest with you. Well, just got to put it out there. Number 7, again, a surprise, but I finally ended up with a copy of Onitama with an expansion. And so I really like it. My 9-year-old really likes it. And he likes the idea of those animal different cards. And he likes the idea of those animal cards being a little bit different. And I honestly, truth be told, did not know how to play Onitama before I picked it up. And I thought you were using a lot more cards. You're using such minimal amount of cards every single game that no 2 games are, ever going to be the same in that regard whatsoever, because the whole premise is you got a couple cards in your hand, you play one, it goes down on the board, your opponent picks that one up, they have to play one, they put it back down for you, and you kind of rinse and repeat until you either capture or knock your opponent out in that way, with the board chess-like style of moving them, sort of almost like a Duke situation if you've played that one as well. I mean, it's a classic for a reason. It's fantastic. I just wasn't expecting my 9-year-old to enjoy it so much. I thought it was going to be a game for me and my wife, and now that I have expansion content, like I was looking at the promos and I'm like, oh, those promos are, yeah, you know what, I can, but I see absolutely no need for the promos, because an expansion or two is going to give you all that you need in terms of just the complexity. And there's a little bit of scope creep I'm concerned about with some of the later expansion extra, animal cards, but so screw it. It's not even going to make that big of a difference. So I'm happy either way, and I'd be happy without any further content for this game as a whole, even though, there's still at least 2 expansions I could get. So then we're talking number 6. And number 6 is High Society. Yeah, another classic, right? I'd never played High Society. The Knizia card-driven auction-style game where you flip a card up and you have a certain number of bidding cards in your hand and you go around and you bid. And whoever gets it, gets it. And they're worth a certain amount of points. There's a couple multipliers. There's a couple negatives. And the tricky part is it's one of those games where if you spend all your money, you don't win. You're out, actually. And so it's only the person who has money left that ends up winning by the most points. And it's a great dynamic. It's crazy at the higher player counts. It's fine at like a 2, maybe 3, but 4 plus is where it shines. And I am so glad I picked this up. My 9-year-old and my 11-year-old totally get it a little bit, but we even played it at a couples game night, and it was just an absolute blast. You can see the gears just clicking as people go, oh, I want to do that. Oh, no, I don't want to. Oh, I do want to. No. And that's absolutely fantastic. You know, it is easily going to be on my top 100 board game list when this comes out. I have no clue when it's going to come out, but it would easily make the list right now, and I'm so happy my family likes it as well. Then number 5, Burnt Moon, Line of Fire Burnt Moon from Osprey Games. It's sitting right behind me right here. I have mixed feelings on this. Mechanically speaking, this is an incredibly sound game. It's unlike anything else I've ever played in the manipulation of the rovers as you're doing the lane controlling, lane battling style of things, because you have to have a card out and then have a same card in your hand in order to activate the card that's out. But then you're actually building it from the deck market that's available to you, that's symmetric between you and your opponent. And then you have to sort of figure out whether or not you want to specialize, you want to just go generally across the board, or anything in between. And the lanes that you're putting down, well, they're the same, but then you lay them out in random order. So your lane that is 3 points of the 8 that you need to win is on the far left, and theirs of the exact same is on the far opposite side. And so which lanes you're going to be going for is eventually going to cause you to have to attack each other. And then also when you do attack each other, you don't just take out the one that's in the field. You actually go and you scour it from the other areas like the market and the hand and the discard pile, and then potentially the one on the board, which is a whole interesting other dynamic as well. So I think mechanically speaking, it's incredibly sound, but ultimately I'm not sure I like it just because it is so thinky in that regard, almost too much for me personally. But I expect nothing less at the same time from the people behind Undaunted, because it's like an Undaunted meets Radland is kind of what I said in my review. So fantastic game, but it has to be right for you. Then Jekyll and Hyde versus Scotland Yard. Then Jekyll and Hyde versus Scotland Yard from 20th Century Games. Again, I have mixed feelings on this because it's made me more interested in going back to, say, a Legacy with the upcoming crowdfunding from Allplay, because it's doing 2-player cooperative trick-taking against an AI system. And the AI system allows you to gradually increase the scenarios and the cases and the rules complexity. And does it kind of get a little bit too complicated at the end? Yeah, I think it gets a little bit too much, but it does allow you to work yourself up there. But again, it's very, very tricky because, sorry, I didn't even mean to say that. Bad pun, dad pun, and Chris horrible person pun. It's just one of those elements that it's such a razor's edge. You're balancing on getting your Scotland Yard figure just up so many spaces. If it's too far, it's so the difficulty again in these 2-player cooperative trick-taking games is much higher and doesn't allow for as much mistake as much comparatively to some other cooperative games that I enjoy playing. So I have mixed feelings on it. I'm not sure what I'm going to do with it yet. I could see myself keeping it. I could see myself easily getting rid of it, but I just don't know. So I have to say that. Then number 3, I talked about this one in the multi-game review as well. Reforest, Plants of the Pacific Northwest, the crowdfunding campaign this past month in May. And I just really enjoyed it. It's a lighter-ish tableau builder, but not without its thinky elements of things. The fact that you can overlay these cards and flip them or not flip them and change the victory points is very clever. And based on the height and all the iconography and all the mechanisms work. And this was a huge, pleasant surprise for me. Now, I worry a little bit potentially about staying power. But the fact that you don't use all the cards in any sort of gameplay at the 2, 3, or 4 player counts is really nice, because then the meta and what's in there is going to change. It's going to be a little bit more tactical. It's going to be a little bit less strategic, and your strategy is going to change from game to game because you don't know what's going to be there. I like the 3-tiered system and choosing very carefully how you want these combos to go, because it doesn't give you the overwhelming analysis paralysis that, say, something Earth does, and it comes in an incredibly tiny box that is incredibly portable and allows you to get it to the table easier, but without, less thinky if that's also what you're going for in addition. Number 2, we're going sort of a halvesies here. It's the Gingham Gazebo combo from Bitewing. Although again, like I said on my video, I still prefer Gingham. Gingham probably might still be my second favorite Bitewing game behind Zuvatus. Zuvatus is still up there, but I also just got my copy of Iliad and Ecor. So with more repeated plays, I'm not sure that necessarily Iliad is going to rank as high, but I could see Ecor. I didn't like Gazebo as much as I was hoping, because I came up with a very high bar in Gazebo, but I think I ultimately maybe liked it slightly more than the previous Bebop offering. It's going to be close. But Gingham, especially at a 2-player count, I think is very, very incredibly manipulative and abstract in nature, which is kind of what I like as a whole. As I was even talking about earlier with the situation with Onitama and even Flamecraft Duals, I love that hive-like feeling. I love that manipulation on the board. I love feeling clever and having the multi-combo turns in order to do that. And so I think there is the potential concern for analysis paralysis again with that one. because of the nature of the game in the first place. I'm not sure how I'd feel at the higher player counts. We only played it at 2, but it could definitely be more chaotic and much, much less strategic, which may be off-putting, but it may also bring some balance to the force in that way. And what was number 1? Well, number 1 was Bombusters. I played Bombusters. I love Bombusters. Bombusters easily would have been in my top 10 of the year for 2024. It's a question of whether or not I'm going to do my top 10 of the year at the end of the year of all 2025 releases, or if I'm going to include ones from other years, because Bombusters, if I do the latter, will be on that list, period. I have no qualms about telling you right now, that is one of my favorite games that I have played in the last year, year and a half. It would have probably been in my top 5 from 2024. I feel that strongly about the cooperative nature of sort of the game, the gang, and trio situation of guessing fuses, defusing, a little bit of powers to help with your deduction, and just the cooperative chaos that goes along with it. I love this game. This game gets my wholehearted endorsement. I may put out a video, separate review on it, but I can't say enough good things about it, and it's a forever game. This is a top 50 game of all time for me easily already. It may be significantly higher, but I don't want to overpromise and then underdeliver later. That is May, though. Way too long of a video, meant to be a lot shorter. You know how I ramble, but when you cover almost 20 games, 30 minutes isn't too bad. So there you go. Stay classy. Have a great freaking day. Let me know what you want to see. Let me know what you want to talk about. And YouTube, Patreon me up. Help me, help you. Thanks. Peace out.